draw here. Instead, we saw a draw in a crazier way. And okay, they're off. It's Armageddon.
It is Armageddon, and Magnus starts with 10 minutes on the clock. Alireza has 7 minutes. And remember, Magnus playing with the white pieces is in a must-win situation. The players will get a 1-second move increment once they pass move 41. And oh, look at that.
Bishop D3 on the board.
With a sense of humor, putting his bishop on D3 for the second time today in front of its own D-pawn.
And now we know the inspiration behind Magnus's opening choice in the first classical game. He clearly prepared this line against the Petrov, and he thought, okay, a bishop on D3 there wasn't bad. Why not play it against the Sicilian? But this is the Petrov. There have been a trade of e-pawns, and it's just a question about whether white is able to generate enough activity with his extra move here in a symmetrical position.
Well, this is not a nice thing from Firuza to play the Petrov, which is so drawy sometimes. And we would wanted to see something G5 and firework in this game also. But it seems like Firuza is so happy to get away in the classical game that he says, okay, draw brings the victory in Armageddon. So let's be very solid.
Wow, and black looks rock solid. I'm really surprised by Magnus's opening approach in a must-win situation, needing to win with white for the points here because he's allowed some trades already.
And shout out to Eric Rosen in the chat. He says, oh, no Stafford Gambit.
Yeah, no Stafford Gambit, unfortunately, at this level. Not yet, at least. Maybe in the last round, if Hikaru needs to beat Fabiano for tournament victory there, we will see an opening like that one. But okay, what do you think, Judith? Any chances for white to create an advantage?
Well, Magnus has to create something. The question is where is he going to bring the bishop to develop? Is he going to play b3 and bishop b2, or bishop to e3 or f4 later? But for the moment, he goes queen b3, attacking the b7 pawn.
B7 swiftly defended, queen c8. Yeah, black is a bit cramped, you've got to say.
Maybe d5 and knight d4 is a very typical way of continuing the fight. And it's on the board.
You call it, Judith, you predict it, and white's knight is going to find a beautiful outpost, or beautiful square at least, on d4, gaining time in the process. And you think Magnus will keep pieces on. Oh, wow, he trades off, creates a very strong d-pawn here for himself.
Makes a lot of sense, because now if white is reaching c5 and rook c1 or rook d1, white has a very nice position. So this is why knight d7, immediately trying to block the opportunity for white to go c5.
Yeah, black's knight wants to come around to c5 itself and hit this white queen. And yeah, both players playing extremely fast up to this point. Magnus has maintained his time advantage 3 extra minutes.
I think rook e1 is a sensible move, but he goes rook c1, and after knight c5, I believe he wants to bring back the queen to d1 and later play b4.
It makes a lot of sense. There's so many ways that Magnus can expand with his pawns, and Alireza actually playing b6.
Yeah, weakening some squares, but at least holding up the advance of white's queenside majority there. It's going to be extremely difficult for Magnus to get that c5 break in a bit later. He's going to have to regroup his pieces. It's going to take a slower pace now, the game. Okay, first he jumps.
Magnus
He insists. I want to play c5. You're not going to stop that.
And I like the way Alireza just goes, be my guest. I'm waiting for that. And here it is on the board.
Wow, I've got to say I'm surprised. Magnus just going route 1, super direct here with c5. This is going to lead to a bunch of piece trades, but he's arguing that with his extra d-pawn here in the center, he's cramping down black's position, and black has some isolated pawns on the queen side.
Well, right now it's not so easy. Where white is going to be moving his queen because the b2 pawn has to be defended. So queen a3 seems to be the best move for that, but you don't want to enter into the pin, right?
Yeah, queen a3, you walk into that pin and it might take a while to break that tension. So what to do? If you step across to the c file, then after a bunch of exchanges, a bunch of trades on c5, the black rook is simply going to gobble up that pawn on b2.
But after all, maybe it is possible to go queen to c3, let's say, and if everything is exchanged on c5 and rook captures the b2, d6 might be the move. And the great...
Whoa. Counterattack. Magnus does not move his queen out of the eye line of the black rook. Instead, bishop a6 hitting the black queen. Chaos for the first time in this game.
Wow.
Clever move, creative move.
It is very clever, but I'm guessing that Firouzja obviously can't touch the white queen, has to just move his queen anywhere that protects the knight on d7.
Yeah, and the question is here, if firstly you can move the queen, as you say, Jovanka, can we take this knight off the board? Because it protects the white bishop, it protects the white queen, and from there the knight is jumping to take the white queen. There's a lot of calculation to be done suddenly.
Yes, which is usually something that you don't have time for in Armageddon. But he moved queen e8 because he wants to keep the queens on the board. Knight b7, I would think.
And you can see that move did not meet with the computer's approval. It's been awarded a question mark, and knight b7.
And knight b6 there, and look at the a7 weakness.
Exactly.
Oh, that pawn keeps dropping off in every game. Every day we see bishop takes a7 somehow happened. Hikaru played it in his game. I think we've seen it in various stages. And wow, big threat, as you say, Judith. Not easy to deal with. White's pieces look clumsy. This is a pin, a self-imposed pin. But for now, white has full control.
Serious problems are posed to Alireza, I think, right now.
We should mention Magnus is on 5 out of 5 in his Armageddons. He's won every single one so far in this tournament. Could it be 6 in a row? He can't win in Classical, but Armageddon, nothing, no one could stop him. Nothing going wrong there.
Well, actually, these days he's more happy to play shortening time controls, it seems, and he also expresses this view. And, well, the result here shows, reflects that quite a bit.
Wow, he's really invading the black camp, the black territory here. Rook c6. Look at that bishop, knight, rook for white. Just entrenched in the black queen side. And not easy for Firouzja to deal with this. Knight takes bishop. The white knight taking the black dark square bishop. Maybe a threat to win a pawn.
Yeah.
How to guard against that one. Firouzja's all tied up.
Yeah, it's not so easy to look for counter chances for black. Queen e7 maybe protecting the d6 bishop, but also after that it seems like white can probably take on d6 and then grab the b6 knight, and it's going to cost a pawn for black.
Yeah. I wonder whether there are also options of maybe retreating the bishop all the way back to c8, just to ask some questions to the knight and hopefully bank on some activity.
After that, I think white should be capturing the knight first on b6, and only after that to capture the d6. And then black still is losing material.
Yeah, black is likely going to lose a pawn no matter what, so Firouzja just has to find a version in which he's active, in which he can throw questions to Magnus. Clock time's not in his favour, down under 3 minutes now. Still a long, long time before he gets that valuable, priceless 1 second increment. It's going to be a struggle to even get there at this point.
And he retreats the knight back to c8 with the idea of capturing, and still Firouzja's pawns are just a disaster there on the queen side. But perhaps Firouzja can generate some play on the king side once white moves the queen.
White has the beloved bishop pair. It feels like if Magnus can weather the storm and not allow any counterplay, those white bishops are going to clean up. Just need to move the queen first, attacked by the black rook.
Yeah, this is the question where white is moving the queen. I think in the next move somehow black wants to go bishop to e4 in the center and attack probably the d5 pawn, because for now the g2 pressure is not much. But I can imagine that black goes bishop e4, f5, queen g6 and looking for counter chances.
Okay, and Magnus slides over to c3, very safe square. Your move on the board, Judith. He needs some counterplay, and he's survived a worse position than this already today for Firouzja, so he will be feeling optimistic if he can whip up some activity. What's Magnus going to do? Get
Capture on a7.
You can take this pawn, he can take the pawn on c7, he has done.
Took c7 first.
But now the black queen has avenues in.
Queen a4, you want to say?
Yeah, first move that comes to mind, and he plays it. Activity over everything here. Hitting the white light squared bishop.
At the same time, bishop can come back to f1, where it's extremely safe and defends everything, the back rank and the g2 square.
And played on the board.
It is played, but the a2 pawn is dropping.
But there is an e5 pawn can drop. And then an A7. I mean,
And,
they're quite...
we're going to see that because that's exactly what's happened in the game.
and the problem is for black, if queen d5 takes, then rook d7, and the piece is going to be falling off for Firuza.
Yeah, you cannot take that white pawn on d5. You will lose a piece. You get skewered at the end there. And Firuza shaking his head for the first time in this game.
But how does he maintain the piece?
I don't think he can. I think he's missed this. I think he was banking on the fact that he could play queen takes pawn, but this will not work. And wow, Firuza stops the clock and resigns.
Yeah, Magnus once again takes an Armageddon victory and nets 1.5 points. And there you see the two players smiling, analysing. But what a dominating performance by Magnus in the Armageddon match.